What's going on? Welcome to the First Down Football Show. My name is Andrew Gradinskis.
I'm George Takis, and today we're going to be going over our top draft sleepers.
So, without further ado, let's get right into it. The first guy that I have on my list is Jalen Farmer. This is a guy that's really rose throughout the draft process, starting back at the end of season to a great combine performance. This is a guy who's seen his stock soar from the sixth, seventh round to about the third, fourth rounds. It's a guy that I'm actually higher on than most people. I have a second round grade on Jalen Farmer. He's 6'5, 318, offensive guard from Kentucky, originally committed to Florida. He has pro level pass strength. You can see it. He delivers a jolt in pass protection. He's a high level puller, and this is due to his great athleticism. He has 34-inch arms. He ran a 4.93 time. He ranked 32 out of 1,867 offensive guards in relative athletic score, and this ranges from 1987 to 2026. He did allow 3 sacks, which is probably average to a little bit higher for guards in this range, but he does need to improve his pass pro technique a little bit. But I think in the NFL with the NFL staffs, he'll be able to get that sound. He picks up blitzes and stunts really well. He plays with his head up, but he can struggle at the second level, which is a little bit odd for an athlete of this range. But in the right schemes, he'll be able to perform at a better level. So the draft fits I have are Jaguars, Packers, who just lost a lot of guard play, and then the Chargers, who desperately need guard.
Yeah, he does look like someone who could really impact the team in that late round. For the next prospect, I have Eric McAllister out of TCU. Eric McAllister is a freak athlete. He's a unicorn. He's 6'4", 194, and he has all this ball skills you want from someone that big. He runs angry. He's pretty quick. He's a great receiver in getting open deep. Ran a lot of fades for TCU, a lot of posts, and he has a lot of production as well. Year before, he had Jack Betch and Savion Williams on his team, and he still was able to carve out a good role for him, having 762 yards. This past year, he was all alone being that wide receiver one alpha, and he did not disappoint, having over 1,000 receiving yards, averaging 18 yards per reception, and took over in one game versus SMU where he had 254 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's a program record right there for yards. For me as a draft prospect, when I'm looking at someone, I want to see that high upside, but also, a good floor. And Eric McAllister has that. He's got the speed, he's got the size, finds soft spots in zones well, and he has great deep ball tracking ability, catching it over his shoulder, making good jump ball catches deep. But he does have issues. Issues I see, he drops those easy catches that you're supposed to make, but he'll make the insane ones. He doesn't run too many routes, or didn't run too many routes in college, running those deep balls, running slants. And I really want to see a route tree that's more developed, being able to run all the routes on it, but can't ask for everything. And for all that speed, he only got a 4.52, which it's crazy now. We're at the point where that isn't that fast. I still think it is fast and he's an in-game speed guy, but that is also a weakness. A lot of people have him day three. I could see him sneaking into day two, honestly, but being at least a fourth round pick. He has everything scouts want, and I could see him fitting into a team that really needs help taking the top off, like the Raiders, Titans, or Saints.
Yeah, I agree. I think he looks a lot like Quentin Johnson in that one in purple, huh? Um,
I I honestly see him like, you don't want to give pro comps, but like
yeah,
Christian Watson year one looks a lot could look a
good
lot
comp.
similar. Thank you.
He's got the size, not quite the Christian Watson speed, but like you
No.
mentioned, 4'5" for a guy who's 6'4" is pretty impressive, and he has the deep ball ability.
Oh yeah.
And I
And
feel like there's a really big bunch up of receivers in that early day three to late day three range that are all kind of similar or all excel at one thing and struggle at another. And McAllister with this height and speed is a guy that kind of set himself apart from the rest of the group.
Yeah, but like honestly, forgot to add this, but like he runs angry. Like there was a play versus SMU where he broke 5 tackles for a touchdown. The game he took over, he's a tank. I
That
like
SMU
him a
game
lot.
was crazy.
Yeah, good
It
game.
was like he was just catching deep post after deep post.
Full takeover. He had X Factor.
All right, for the next guy, I have Charles Demings. This is a guy that I feel like you're either really high on or you've never heard of before. He's a cornerback from Stephen F. Austin, obviously FCS competition, one of his knocks here. Comes in at 6'1", 190 pounds. Not ideal for a number one corner on the outside, but he has the speed and physicality to guard number one receivers in the NFL. That's something I firmly believe in. He's technically sound. When you watch him, he's patient in press coverage. In press man, he doesn't lunge and he waits for the receiver to make the first move, which is huge. And he has the catch up speed too. He oftentimes, obviously, we're talking about FCS competition, but a lot of times the receivers are actually ahead of him off the line of scrimmage. They're getting on top of him, but he has the catch up speed to be able to make up that ground and then make a play on the football. If you look at a lot of his interceptions this last year, he's in press man and he kind of lets the receiver get on top of him a little bit without stacking him, and then he impedes his way into an interception. And it's really impressive to see what he does. Excellent ball skills, as I've been mentioning. He had 34 or 35 career pass breakups, 4 interceptions this last season. The two knocks on him, like we've mentioned, are the FCS competition, and then he was inconsistent at the Senior Bowl, which is a little concerning if you're because that's his first real exposure to FBS level competition. But in that, he also had good moments as well in the Senior Bowl, and so I think this is a guy that I'm willing to take a third round pick on. A lot of people have him maybe early day three, whether that's the fourth or fifth round. I see a lot of people kind of in the fifth round, the sixth round on this guy. He's a guy that I'm willing to take in the third round, and I could even be talked into taking him at the end of the second round, I think. Just this corner class, I think, is really strong in the second round, and there's a lot of guys that are going to be going off the board there. So I'm looking at the Saints, who lost a lot of their corners. They lost Adebo 2 years ago, and then they lost Alontae Taylor this year. Demings is kind of a guy that can fill that role. They also play a lot of zone coverage. They're towards the top of the league, and they play a lot of single high coverage as well. So this is a team that really needs to emphasize strong outside corners, and that's something that Demings can do. And the same with the Falcons as well. They're very similar in that schematic defensively, and so something that Demings can come in and do and be a top level guy, a top level number two for the Falcons. And then the Commanders just, they're really struggling at corner. They haven't been able to hit on a pick at cornerback the last couple of years, and they just cut Marshawn Lattimore. So taking a shot on Charles Demings here in the third round or wherever they could potentially get him, I think makes a lot of sense for them as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I was on the other side of people on this where I've never heard of him, but I do agree that the corner class is very deep in that second round or deep in that second day, and that a lot of
Mm-hmm.
guys will come off the board early. And I could see that a lot of, not saying he's a reach, but I could say a couple reaches in that third round.
Well, I mean, the Patriots drafted Cole Strange in the first round, so
We're not talking about linemen, are we? Or the
no,
Patriots or
but
guards. On to the next
everyone's
one.
board is different. Everyone's board is different.
Next up, we got Oscar Delp, the tight end out of Georgia. And he's a sleeper for the big reason of going to a big school, going to Georgia, where the tight ends in front of him never let up and were never bad. Never gave him a chance to, crack into that number one tight end spot with having Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington is a freak. Like he never had his chance, and then the past 2 years he got that, and just didn't perform too well. He performed good. He had or not good. He performed all right. 250 yards both seasons, and he totaled his career at Georgia at 70 catches, 854 yards, and 9 touchdowns. But the reason I like Oscar Delp is because he is so damn fast. At 6'5", 245, running a 4.48, that is some insane speed for a tight end. And I know we all saw Kenyon Sadiq run fast, but this guy's a sleeper who could really do well in that H-back position if a team helps him out. He's got all the physical tools. He was a big prospect out of high school, great athlete, not the best blocker, good hands as well, will catch what you throw at him. He had a 75 catch percentage, but the problems are there. Minimal production, not very good run after the catch, not a good blocker. He got better at pass blocking, not as much run blocking. He has that smaller frame where it's going to be hard to block those big DNs he'd go against if he was an inline. I don't see teams taking him as an inline tight end and being that number one. I could see them being using him in as an H back, being flexed off, even in the slot, honestly. He could do some good work there. And the fits I see are the Patriots, who need that second tight end as Hunter Henry's getting older in age. The Niners, same thing with Kittle. Kittle can be that inline and he can be flexed off. And with the Cardinals, I just see them running the two tight ends and having Delp there as that H back. A lot of people think he's day three. I think he's going to go at the start of day three and not towards the latter or the end of that day.
Yeah, Delp was a guy who was getting first round buzz right after Bowers declared for the draft, and Delp was a guy that was, it felt like every year was like he showed promise. He was going to be that next great tight end for Georgia. And just never really materialized, but he has the traits, he has the speed and the height and the build, like George mentioned, and it'll be interesting to see what team takes a flyer on him and then how they develop him. And he's a guy who might, like you mentioned, have to play in that H-back role, that tight end too, at least for the start of his career, but it will be interesting to see how his career develops.
Like Kyle Pitts, but just in college, like always they had fantasy college football, everyone would be drafting him high, but yeah, that's where I lie with him. All right, our
Mm-hmm.
next one.
Yeah, I got another Georgia prospect here. Michael Morris, offensive guard from Georgia, coming in at 6'4", 330 pounds. NFL size. He has NFL size. And he's also an elite athlete. At the combine, he tested out, and his relative athletic score ranked 7 out of 1,804 offensive guards of all time. Or, I guess, technically dating back to 1967, which is over 50 years of data. So you're taking a guy you're taking a flyer on an elite athlete here. He's great in pass protection. You watch his film. Georgia runs like this bootleg scheme play, and they have him pulling, and he's able to pick up a D end on a bootleg pass. And it's pretty impressive to watch him move in pass protection. It's something that he really excels at. The other thing in the run, he's really good at the second level. Sometimes can struggle right off the line of scrimmage in the run. And some other weaknesses he has are in pass pro. Sometimes his pad height gets too high, and he doesn't really have a good base, which causes him to get pushed back a little bit. And he's late to recognize stunts a couple of times. You see this come up on film, which causes him to be late to the spot and get beat. But overall, I mean, he's a multi-year starter for Georgia, an SEC program who's been at the top of the top. It's a guy who has all the traits that you could possibly want from a starting offensive guard. And so the seventh round undrafted free agent consensus doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. This is a guy that I'd be willing to take in the fifth round, potentially even higher, depending on this is a really deep offensive guard class, but it's a challenging one too because you don't have a lot of true guards. A lot of people are going to be drafted to play guard that had played tackle previously in college. This is a guy who has started at guard both on the left and right side at Georgia for multiple years, and a guy that I think has all the traits of a high end guard in this league. So some draft fits I have are the Dolphins. It makes sense. It's a guy that doesn't need to start day one and can kind of develop there. There's no rush. The Seahawks, they've had guard problems with Anthony Bradford there. So grabbing a guy like Micah Morris, even as a depth piece at first and being able to develop him makes a lot of sense. And then the Bears, I think with that offensive scheme, you need athletic guards that can pull and move in space. And I think Micah Morris is that guy, and it makes a ton of sense here.
Yeah. Honestly, if anyone can start in the SEC, they should at least be drafted. Like, I'm one of the believers who believes that SEC football is better than Big Ten, better than ACC, and all that. And
Hmm.
it's much more competitive. And yeah, honestly, pulling on a bootleg and getting the DN sounds insane. I didn't watch the film, but that does sound like an
I'll send
insane.
you the
You need
clip.
complete athleticism. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Next one I got is Bud Clark. Bud Clark, a lot of you don't remember, but back when TCU had their championship run in 2022, Bud Clark was starting as a true freshman, which is absolutely insane to me. But he is finally making his way to the NFL draft, and he is someone I'm very high on. He's going to be that deep 12, 15-yard safety who's going to be all the way back, and he plays pass insane. Over his college career, he's had 15 interceptions. He has great ball skills when the ball is in the air, great coverage skills, whether that's man, zone, if he's deep safety, if he's in the slot, that star role, that nickel, does it all well. Very athletic, very fluid. Problem, can't very doesn't tackle very well. Has a lot of injuries. 3 of the years he was injured for a portion of it, and he is small. You look at that weight and you're like, wait, that guy's going to play in the NFL. He and that is a lot of his tackling issues. He's very small. He doesn't have a lot of weight under him, and he gets strung out. He dives at people, and I could see that getting fixed at the next level where he'll be in that high safety role where it's not as a big an issue when instead of rolling down or being in that slot, but eventually he will become that guy because he does have the raw athleticism. It's just he's small. But I do think he will get drafted before day three, or sorry, fifth round. I think he will be a fourth round guy, maybe even third round, depending on how the draft goes.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of volatility with the safeties. Everyone's going to have them ranked differently, and everyone's going to have a different need for the type of safety that you want in your building. But the first time that Bud Clark really his draft stock started to soar a little bit was the Senior Bowl. I mean, every day of that Senior Bowl, his name was coming up multiple times. It was always Bud Clark and Kyle Lewis, the linebacker safety hybrid from Pitt. Those two guys, their name was being called constantly, and they were making play after play after play.
Not to get on
And
the tent. Kyle
oh, go ahead.
Lewis is a freak. Oh my.
He is
He,
he is a freak.
I forgot about his Senior Bowl. Kyle Lewis, I got to see him in person when he played BC, and that game was insane because I'm pretty sure he had a pick. He had a
Hmm.
forced fumble. He's all over the field and he's sideline to sideline. He's an insane pass coverage guy, really fast. That's another guy that I think
That's
could
another
fly.
one of your guys, huh?
Yeah, now is.
It'll
Now
be
is.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes. He could probably go second or third round, but um,
No, he will. Easy.
yeah, but yeah, I
Prototype
mean,
linebacker.
yeah, Bud Clark was making plays at the Senior Bowl. He was getting interceptions, multiple throughout the couple days there, and just the motor that he plays with, it just screams like dog, when you watch him play. So
He's willing it and being a run
yeah,
defender. He's just not a good one.
no, yeah, exactly.
All
Um,
right.
So for my fourth prospect, I have Jayshon Barham. Uh, this is an interesting prospect. He's a linebacker edge from Michigan, 6'3", 243. Obviously, with that weight, he's probably going to have to start as more of a off-ball linebacker wherever he ends up in the NFL, just because you really look for your edge rushers to be over 250, and that's something that he can develop into. His strengths, he's an explosive athlete. I mean, he jumps off the film when you're watching Michigan. He's a violent tackler. He is violent in the run game as well. Like good instincts against the run game I have here, but you watch him bench press dudes off and shed blocks and be able to make the tackle is pretty impressive. Um, Weaknesses, kind of areas he's lacking. He still needs to develop coverage skills, especially if he's going to be playing kind of that off ball stand up linebacker role. Um, he can get caught looking into the backfield too. He's an aggressive player, so he's going to get caught by play action a couple times. He's part of it. And then discipline and judgment concerns. He had that play against Ohio State where he headbutted the ref. I don't know if you remember that. But overall, he's a guy that is going to be a true competitor, high motor player for you. He has elite athleticism and a guy that can make a day one impact. He's had his stock soar up from maybe like the third, fourth round. Um, that's kind of where he is now. I see some people starting to get around to him as a second round pick. I think he's going to be firmly in the second round pick, or second round, I should say. I think his floor is Seattle. I think that fit makes a ton of sense at 64, if he's even there, just because, he would fit that Mike McDonald scheme so well. And they lost Boye Mafe, but they don't have a direct need at edge rusher. But a guy that can come in on third down and get after the passer on third and long, second and long situations makes a ton of sense for Seattle there. And then they can also use him as that chess piece. He's really good at blitzing from the stand up role. So that makes a ton of sense. And Mike McDonald will be able to scheme him well. The Eagles make a ton of sense. They like those freaky, athletic edge rushers. And then they just lost Nakobe Dean as well. So not saying that he would be a direct fill for that role, but kind of use him in that role that was kind of vacated by Dean and Phillips in free agency. And then the Buccaneers, I think, is his ceiling at 46. I believe they're at. They desperately need edge rusher. They were in the bottom half of the league in pressure when only rushing four, and pressure rate as a whole too. So getting a guy that can get after the passer. They lost Levante David, who obviously you're not drafting Barham to play middle linebacker for that team, but I think the scheme fit makes a lot of sense here. And really, any team that gets him, I think, is getting a steal. We've seen Michigan players, rise, especially Michigan edge rushers go in the second round and not really amount to much. You think of David Ajabo and Taco Charlton, but it's I think Barham's worth the swing in the second round. You're just getting a freaky athletic talent.
Upside is everything.
Mm-hmm.
You saw that last year with Nick Emmanuel, and like people didn't think he had the stats to make it. But I apologize. Once the combine hit, everyone wanted him, and he was a vital role in that Seahawks defense. And so you got to draft for upside, but the thing is, you might end up with someone who's just athletic and can't play football. But
Yeah.
Barham, he looks like a beast and could help out any team. Next up, I got Desmond Reed out of Pitt, the running back. Desmond Reed, he can do everything, but running between the tackles and put his head down. But other than that, he's great. He's a great returner. He's an explosive returner. Can really run it back well, kick return, sprint return, lightning in a bottle, really fast once he gets the edge. He has the speed, the home run speed, and more. Like he will outran every DB in college. Runs insanely fast and will get that home run. Great receiver out of the backfield. Did a lot of things with that. Very elusive, very shifty, but he's tiny. 5'6", 174. One big hit from a 300-pound lineman, and your career's done. He can't run in between the tackles, which is obvious, like not too big. And in pass pro, he is a liability, being that small. But pass pro is an effort thing, so we can see a change in that in the NFL level. My draft fits are teams that need a third down back or are going to need a change of pace back who can really, get the team going when the first running back isn't there, or even just a returner. Ravens, I could see that being a very good fit, kind of have that Keaton Mitchell role after he departed. Chargers as well. Teams that need returners will draft him easily because he's one of the best returners in the draft class. And the Raiders as well, getting another change of pace back. Desmond Reed is a really, really sound football player. His size is the only issue. And we've seen running backs with that size succeed at the next level, but they're not a dime a dozen, and few come where they can really make a difference at that in the NFL. But I do think he will get drafted and will get drafted day 3.
Yeah, I think the first comp that jumps off the page to me is Tariq Cohen, right? I mean, look at the picture, and I think that's a comp that a lot of people have been throwing around, and it makes sense because of the height and the athletic ability. Um, this running back class is going to be a super interesting one because, you have your blue chip prospect in Jeremiah Love, and then you kind of have a little bit of a break until you get into your second group of guys. You have Jadarian Price.
Price is blue chip. Look,
Blue
if he
chip.
was the if he was the bell cow, if he was the bell cow in any offense, I think he would be going in the first round. Is that crazy to say? If he got power
I mean, it's
five
not
carries,
crazy to say because he had 1,300 yards last year as a 1B to Love, but I think it's a little crazy just because,
Love's obviously better. Don't get me wrong,
yeah,
but I
of course.
still think he would have done. He would go first round. He might still go first, honestly.
I mean, yeah, a lot of people, like some people have him going to the Seahawks. I would be a lot more comfortable taking him in the second round, maybe with the Vikings pick, or honestly, after Love, I'm not touching a lot of these running backs till the third round. And then you have, you're that second group of Price. If you want to put Price above the rest, I'm okay with that. And then you get into your, Mike Washington, your Jonah Coleman, Emmett Johnson. And then you get into your third group of guys, right? Your day 3 running backs, and is kind of all clustered, and they all excel at something, and they all lack at something. So Desmond Reed will be interesting to see where he kind of lands. I know the height concern and the size concern is real, but you talked about the ability to be a playmaker, and I think the team that he would be best in, and hear me out, like the Chicago Bears. They don't really have that pass catching back. Yes, they have Swift, whose future is kind of up in the air. Manungai's more of a power back. I think the Bears and their Ben Johnson's ability to use a guy like Desmond Reed would be very interesting. And then he also helps in the return game, something that they lost with Duvernay departing. So I think that fit makes a lot of sense and it could be really fun to see Tariq Cohen 2.0 going back to Chicago. But um, I think you're right. I think someone will take a flyer on him late. And if not, he'd be a priority undrafted free agent to sign. All right, for my final player, I have Travis Burke, offensive tackle from Memphis. He's just a monster. He's 6'9", 325 pounds. Obviously, massive frame, super physical. I mean, you watch his film. There's probably games where he has 15 knockdowns. Obviously, Memphis, in the American Conference, they're not playing against that top tier talent. Um, his first game of the season, I believe Memphis played Chattanooga, and he was just throwing guys in pass coverage. He was throwing guys. I mean, it was just like unfair, and like these guys were also not the big so it makes you wonder if he can defend against speed rushers, and he was able to do that at a lower level competition. Obviously, in the NFL, it's a different animal. Um, but super physical, excellent finisher, high motor. He finishes plays even when he's off the screen and the run is going to the left and he's playing right tackle. He's taking a guy all the way back to the sideline. Um, so super high motor. He struggles at the second level a little bit. There's times where when he's going directly towards that inside linebacker on an inside zone play or whatever, like a counter play, he struggles in space a little bit to kind of wall off that linebacker. And so there was one play, and I saw that happen, and it really just blew up the play, and the running back could have been right down the hashes. His pass drop needs refinement. Obviously, with a frame that big, it's kind of hard to get your traditional steps in because with how big he is if he takes traditional steps, his depth is going to be way too far back. So you need a coach that can really develop that. And then the last thing I had on him is he too big? We've seen prospects this big before come in. One that he reminds me of is Xavier Truss, the 6'9" tackle from Georgia a couple years ago. And he went undrafted and he kind of bounced around from Denver. And now I believe he's on New Orleans. But, is he too big to succeed? And that's a real concern. I think PFF has him ranked as the 300th prospect. I think 311 or something like that. I'd be willing to take a flyer on this guy in the fifth and sixth round. I saw someone at a mock draft and they took him in the second round, which is a little rich for me. But he has all the traits that you could want, and I think he has the potential to start for an NFL team for many years. So the draft fits I have are the Chargers. Obviously, they have their tackle situation set, but both tackles have really struggled to stay healthy. A guy like Travis Burke as a depth rotation piece would be huge for them. And Harbaugh really likes those big offensive linemen. The Bills, I think, again, he's not going to start day one. But they have Spencer Brown there at right tackle, another guy who's 6'8", who came from lower level school. So I think that fit makes sense as well as a development piece. And then the Rams, McClendon kind of came out of nowhere as a fifth round pick. How consistent is he going to be in the future? Grabbing a guy like Travis Burke again as depth, but could also develop into that starter at right tackle makes a lot of sense here for the Rams.
Does it remind you of like another big tackle that, perhaps a team like the Ravens drafted who was abysmal?
Well, yeah, it does, but I
Yeah,
think
you
I
can
think
say,
he's a lot more technically sound than Daniel Falale ever was.
all right. All right. They just
Because
had to put,
Falale was what he was a rugby player and he came to Minnesota and kind of had to work it out there and never really got technique. And he moved to guard and still sucks. So I don't think Burke is the guy you're going to move to guard just because he's too big. I think he's
yeah,
not a
that
guy
could,
that's going to be able to pull for you and do all this stuff. But I watched him and they played Arkansas and he had a good game against Arkansas this year. And obviously Arkansas is that low level SEC competition, but there's not a lot of games where Memphis is playing high level competition. So he played well, and I think it would be really interesting to bring him in as a developmental piece and see if the right coaching staff can get their hands on him, what he can develop into.
yeah, no, that comparison was just fully to piss you off.
Yeah, no, I know.
Last but certainly not least, we got Eli Hayden, right? Rich? I don't
I
know.
think that's
Don't
right.
quote me on that
Heidenreich.
name. We got the receiver running back out of Navy. Most of you don't know, Navy loves to run the triple option, meaning they're not passing too much. Obviously, they pass a good amount with Eli Heinrich, but that's why he is both a wide receiver and running back because he will be that H-back, come around, take the handoff, all sorts of stuff. He is a weird prospect in my eyes because he's a receiver running back, excelled at both at the collegiate level, but like he doesn't really have a fit in the NFL because he can do so much pretty well. He has immaculate body control on those deep catches. He ran a lot of fades, a lot of slants at the college level, and he was really good catching, over the shoulder, catching over people. for a guy who's mainly a running back, averaged 18 yards per catch, and on the other side, he averaged 6.8 on the ground. But the weird part about it is the two play styles don't translate. You got this. He as a receiver, great deep threat, very quick, great guy, or not great guy, great, all right route runner. Run game, he's running between the tackles, trying to push you all the way down. He's not an elusive guy. So I really don't know how he's going to fit in this because he has a weak route tree. He was in a weak conference playing in the American, and he's not an elusive guy. He can't really, go one on one with the defender. He's not going to, outrun them or juke them. He's going to have to run them over. And so that's going to be a tricky thing when teams look to draft him. How is he going to fit? And the draft fits I have for him are the 49ers, Ravens, and Cowboys, teams who can use someone like that who could be in the slot, go in motion, run the ball, or even just those quick routes that you need, or even a deep threat to take it over the top. They just have to find a way to use him correctly because he's a very good athlete, very good football player. He's just not your prototypical receiver running back style. Like I could say Debo Samuel, but he's not elusive as Debo Samuel. Definitely has the same power and, catchability and speed, but not really a prototypical prospect.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see where he kind of lands. You're definitely higher on him than I am. Um, like we mentioned before, that that group, that third group of running backs, kind of that day three group. You know, he'll set himself apart as a pass catching back. There's a couple other ones that I'm higher on, but it'd be interesting. I think the weight is a concern if you want to put him. He has a potential role at H back. And the weight there is a concern. Uh, but it'll be interesting to see what Team A takes a chance on him, and then B what how they utilize him. And I think that's going to be a big part of his success in the NFL is what team he lands on and how they plan to use someone of his skill set.
Yeah, no one's running the triple option at the NFL level, so
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really have a
Yeah,
fit.
no, exactly.
um, so that is our conclusion of our draft sleepers. Went through a good amount of guys. We'll definitely get some more out to you on social media, whether that's TikTok, YouTube, or this podcast. If you have any questions about any of the prospects or comments, feel free to reach out to us at any of our socials. And
Yeah. Make sure to stay tuned. We got 23 days till NFL draft, so we're going to be pumping out content. I know we're going to be releasing our top 10 rankings for every position, as well as mock draft, potentially first combined mock draft next week. So stay tuned. This was just kind of to maybe highlight some prospects that A, haven't been heard of, or B, aren't getting enough traction. So I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one.